Human bodies have always fascinated me. I remember being a young boy, 6 years old, and I went with my father and my brother to the sauna in Vienna or in Baden, and I saw naked men and women, and I wondered, wow, this is amazing. There's big ones, small ones, skinny ones. And so that kind of stuck with me, and I went on to medical school, and again, I got into the intrinsics of the human body. I dissected for 6 or 7 years of my entire career just cadavers, and I thought, amazing, again, the body, the intrinsics of it, the tendons, bones, nerves, what have you. And then physiology, we go more into the intrinsics of the human body, and the fascination for me to this amazing thing that we call the human being has been enriched. And I think if there's one thing I would want to leave with you tonight, it's maybe a renewed fascination with your own body that you inhabit, that you express yourself with, and you have been given to do the things that you enjoy doing. This afternoon, I was asked to talk about transhumans. Now, what if it were possible to transcend our human limitations, to enhance our powers, to extend our lifetimes, to exchange this mortal matrix of humanity into a binary structure of an avatar living in cyberspace? This is a fascinating question. However, I'm not a philosopher, but a physician. And I'm much rather fit to answer the question, what if you've lost your arm last week due to a trauma? Or what if you will lose your hand next week to a tumor resection? Now, these are the questions I'm facing all the time. I live in a broken world, and the people I meet are patients with a broken body seeking help. So for the last 25 years, I'm dealing with patients who have lost their hand function, and whatever you've done that was so dear to you before that will suddenly, within one instance, be gone. Relating to your spouse, being with your children, with your hand, doing your work, being a musician, having a hobby, whatever you've done, holding a telephone, drinking a glass of water, the most mean necessities will be utterly impossible. So whatever we do, we try to reconstruct with biological means, whether this is a congenital problem like you see here with somebody, a little boy having lost 2 arms, or somebody with an instant of a moment having lost both hands in a traumatic electrocution injury, or maybe somebody like in the first ray of pictures who has the hand, but he lost all neural connections to it, and its flaw, it's useless to the patient. So we try to use everything we have in our armamentarium. I'm a reconstructive surgeon, bones, tendons, nerves, what have you, to reconstruct these hands. But sometimes we're at our wits' end. Now, with this man, who about 15 years ago was reconstructed with 2 dead men's hands, because here, what can we do? We have a prosthesis, but we also can use hands from a dead man who's long dead by now, but he now lives on in this patient, Theo Kelz, who has lost a hand with an explosive device. And this video is only a year old, and he's the longest living 15 years after the transplantation patient who is using both hands in an elegant way. And not only for big tasks, but also smaller tasks, as you can tell. But sometimes we are at the end of even that, and even a transplantation, meaning restoring from a dead man what has been lost, does not work. And here we see a number of hands that have been reconstructed, not with flesh and blood, but with mechatronics. Patients like this who have lost an entire arm can have some hope of a reconstructed extremity. So for example, this man, 100 years ago in the First World War, has lost an entire arm. Now this is a very crude device, just braced to his body, but he can maintain his family, sustain a life, just by having that. So it's a useful device to him. But in today's world, we have very complex mechatronic devices. The question is, how do we get the biosignals out of the body into the machine that can do so much? So that somebody who's lost both arms and both feet, and this is a father of 3 children, can have this mechatronic devices not as a burden, but as an empowerment. So that bionic reconstruction, as is seen in several films, can be a blessing to him rather than a burden. Now, this is not a futuristic scenario, but this is really true. And there's, in some centers in the world, bilateral amputees can have a mechatronic device that actually works, not only in gross motor tasks, but also specific fingers and hand movement. I'm sorry for this bloody image, but this is what we do in these instances. Yeah, you may not make much of this, but here's a small video, and we see that there is the actual nerves. I'm sorry for that. Maybe you can just close your eyes for a moment if you can't bear this. But this is what we do. We dissect out all these nerves. You see my fascination for the human body here. And we take out the nerves, we reroute them to where the patient thinks of hand function. And these are meticulous surgeries that last several hours. And then in the end, it takes a lot of neuro rehabilitation, meaning that the patient needs to think of what has happened. Now look at that video. That is the same patient you've just seen in the surgery. And I tell him, make a fist, open the hand, flex the elbow, extend the arm, and you see that there's different muscles in his chest twitching. So he can think for a prosthesis, and these myosignals will be picked up and drive a device. And once that happens, you can see him again, and there's these myosignals again twitching, and with these he can control the machine. And that is really, you can see he's smiling. He has found a new freedom. His body has an extension. Yes, mechatronic, but it works for him. Now this is a laboratory setting, not an arm to take home, obviously. Whatever he thinks of, and again I would like to just look at his chest and where these muscles are twitching, he thinks of his hand. He's not thinking of the prosthesis necessarily, but he thinks of making a fist, opening the hand, closing the hand, rotating the wrist. So this is really truly an intuitive device where the patient can have an extension and he can work with that as his body part. I see these type of patients that you see on these images here almost every week. And these are hands of patients who have no hope to have a future for that. And I remember even 5-6 years ago when patients like this came to my office, I said, you know what, I'm sorry, there's nothing else I can do for you. That hand will be lost. So these are the hands. You see, there's one who has had a neurological accident and all nerves have been divided and there's just no use of the hand whatsoever. That's 15 years after the injury. Or here another one, a young man from Niederösterreich who has had a crushed hand and it just doesn't work. 2 years after lots of surgery and there's just nothing working. Now if you look at this hand, and this is a student in my lab, and you see he's opening, closing, does all kinds of things. There's 8 electrodes mounted around the forearm. Look at the mechatronic hand, at the intrinsics of it. It opens, closes, on demand, precision grip, power grip, collateral grip. All these important types of hand function are being restored. So I thought, God, you know, these hands work. Why can you not just bring them to the patient? Here's a story I want to tell of the patient you're going to see in a moment. He came to me and said, Doctor, I had so much surgery, I want to have hand function. What about these mechatronic hands? Can we not just have that work for me? So this is a video we had for him. So he thinks of hand function. His own hand doesn't work at all, but you see the virtual hand works. So this is what we then thought. We thought, okay, so this works. So could it be possible that we remove a patient's existing hand and replace it with mechatronic ones? So this was in May 2010. I asked him, Patrick, look at your hand, look at this thing. Look at his face. He's smiling. He thinks, wow, 2 years after the injury, I can move my hand. Amazing. So I thought, God, you know, it's a difficult decision. We made a symposium. I invited theologians, ethicists, specialists, surgeons, patients from all over Europe, and we've been discussing the question, is it ethically feasible to amputate somebody's body part and replace it with a mechatronic one? And so we have come to the conclusion, yes, we can. And this is the image just prior to surgery. We said, okay, here's the mechatronic hand. It's going to be a replacement. And then actually we do what was thought impossible. We take off the hand. 6 weeks after the amputation, and he's using his mechatronic hand by doing this. He has not been able to do this for a long time. And here again, lacing his shoes. This is a rather complicated task. My kids, none of them can do that by now. They're 8 and 7. I have to do that for them. So it's really amazing what that can do. Or here again, picking a grape. Now that is a really difficult task. If you push too hard, it's going to squish. If you're too soft, it's going to slide. So I think that is an amazing feat of mechatronic reconstruction. But don't take my word. But I would like to now to ask Patrick Meyerhofer to come on stage and talk for himself, and I would ask you to please welcome him on stage. Patrick, welcome. He has just now received the award for the Paralympics of the Year 2 days ago, I think, was it?
2 days ago.
So welcome to us.
Thank you.
So Patrick, how did you experience the first weeks after your accident, when you realized both hands were gone, or almost gone?
Yeah. So to be honest, at the beginning, you don't realize what happened to you. You have to imagine I went to work at Friday morning. Yeah, I was a 20-year-old man, and then I had an accident in the afternoon. And from this day on, my life changed completely. So it takes a while to recognize that not just my left hand was destroyed, it was also the right hand and also the upper leg on the right side. So, but then after a couple of days, you start to realize what happened to you and your life has changed completely. And then you fall into a very big, deep hole. And then it takes a while, and hopefully that everyone who has an injury like that has a family, has some friends who then be strong for you if you can't do that. So at the beginning, it was kind of frustrating for me because I wasn't independent anymore. I need some help to get dressed, to prepare my food, to wash my face and my body. So, but after let's say, a couple of weeks, in my case, I start to accept this new situation. And from that point on, my life changed again to the positive.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that honest answer. Next one is, what led to the decision to finally amputate the hand?
You know my case pretty well, so he was the one who did almost 10 operations to try to reconstruct my left hand. So you have to imagine, you have seen it on a video, that my hand was still there, but it was without a function and without any feeling. So it was totally useless for me for almost 2.5 years. So if I want to cook something, I burned my hand, I just recognize it because I smell, that my hand was burned. Or things like that. So it was really frustrating. And then you give me the answer, I'm sorry, Patrick, we can't do anything anymore. So your left hand will stay at this stage. And I said, okay, thank you for that answer. And it was okay for me that time because I was tired to stay in the hospital, go to rehabilitation, get home again for a couple of weeks, and so on. So it was kind of a circle, but I was not getting a better health situation. So at that time, I go to the internet like everyone does today, and I searched for different options for me. Is it possible to get a hand transplantation or to get a prosthetic? And then I see, okay, yeah, prosthetic hands are very good at the moment, so they are technologically very proven. And then I start asking you, maybe is it possible, like you mentioned, can you amputate my hand and can I get a prosthetic? And then we went together to a company out the box, which is placed here in Vienna. And they are producing medical products like wheelchairs, knees, and hand prostheses. And we try out that device, so you have seen it on the video. My left hand was there on my leg, and on the table there was the prosthetic, and I was thinking of closing the hand, opening the hand. And the prosthetic on the table was able to open and close, but my hand was just hanging down. So this was the day where I recognized, come on, I want that. And the funny thing was, we did this in the 9 weeks break of my school. So I said, come on, I got 9 weeks time to get the amputation, to get the fitting. And after six weeks, it works. So it was a very good procedure.
Great. So maybe I'll just skip because we're running late with time, but just maybe any regrets to that procedure, or how do you feel about that?
So in my case, I have to tell you that with the prosthetic, I don't feel disabled. So it takes a while, of course, to learn how to use the device. So it takes up to 3 up to 6 months. It's always depending how much therapy you get. But as you can see, I can open and close my hand different ways. I can rotate the wrist, I can relax, and the hand goes back to resting position. So the prosthetic device gives me much more benefit than my human body was able to get at that point. So I don't have any regrets. From my point of view, it was the best decision in my life to get away from my destroyed hand to the prosthetic limb.
Do you feel like a cyborg?
Do I look like a cyborg? What do you think? No, I don't think like a cyborg. So the only thing what I use a device which helps me to live my life again, like you are using glasses or someone needs some crutches or whatever. I need a prosthetic hand, yeah. And I like to show it, you see it's white, black, it looks cool, fancy.
So Patrick, since this since this is a what-if conference, I will just ask, what if I'm going to take the hand away?
Yeah. So you would see, now I feel disabled, yeah, because what can I do? Yeah? Just with one hand, it's possible to live the everyday life with just one hand, but for me it's kind of boring because I know how good the device is. So if you would take my hand away, I would try to get it back as soon as possible. And yeah.
Okay. So thank you, Patrick. Yeah. Thank you, Patrick. So you heard it from him, he does not feel like a cyborg even though he has a technological hand, but he's so intuitively driving it, so he says it's still my own. But now if you would ask his question, his girlfriend is in the audience, which hand would you rather give to her when you hold hands with her? He will probably say, my right hand. Or at least his girlfriend would take that. And I think, why is that? It's because, that's what I said at the very beginning, the body is given to us, we live in this, every cell is connected to us. And so I think this leads to my last slide, which I think is the biggest difference, is a machine we control, but the body we inhabit. Thank you.